You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
You're not talking?
No, it just feels weird. It just feels weird to be recording again.
It is. We took a little break, and our last episode that we did record was very different for multiple reasons.
Very different, yes.
than our normal episodes.
Extremely different. I needed a whole week of recuperation.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
If you're tuning in for the first time, we're the Good Evening Girls. This is Two Girls, One Crossword, your favorite weekly Podword crosscast. I'm Grace Topinka.
And I'm Chelsea Rowan. And if you tuned in for the first time last week, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
If you were expecting more of the same this week, also sorry, because that's once in a lifetime, baby. Well, actually, it's once every 100 episodes at the least. At the most? Either.
We could pop in an episode like that here and there. It's our podcast. We can do whatever we want.
We can do whatever we want. We don't get paid to do this, so this is a hobby, and hobbies are supposed to be reflective of our desires at the time. So if tomorrow we wake up and we're like, we hate crosswords, then we will change this podcast to Two Girls, One Knitting Needle? Or Two Girls, Two Knitting Needles? 4 knitting needles. Who knows?
We need 4. What if I knit with one needle and you knit with the other?
See? Oh my God. Unnecessary, but fun.
But we could do that. That is our choice if we wanted to do that as our podcast.
This is our podcast.
We will stick to crosswords. Thank you, everyone who tuned in to our last episode, Bonanza. It was really fun. Crazy fun. I feel like I had never sweat so much in my life.
I was sweating a lot. I feel like I used a lot of my concentration ability to just stay on topic and also to read the questions that were coming up. I hope some of our listeners tuned into the YouTube because I feel like you get a more well-rounded experience on the YouTube.
That explains everything.
Yes, it explains
go check
everything.
Out our YouTube. Chelsea edited it.
I did.
Herself, and it's amazing, and everyone should go watch it. But don't laugh at us. You can laugh with us, just not at us.
Yes, that's the only rule of our podcast.
That is the rule, yeah.
So, did anybody write to you about or talk to you about the 100th episode? I had one person tell me that they were confused about how we were scoring, how we were getting so many right. And I was like, listen, it's our podcast. First of all, it's just a gentle reminder. But I guess we could have been a little clearer that Grace was not quizzing me and I was not quizzing Grace, and we were not quizzing against each other. We were quizzing together. So basically,
we're co-hosts.
If one of us got the answer right, even if it was our topic, even if we wrote the question, we counted it as right because we deserve it. It's been 100 episodes. We deserve a little happiness in our life once in a while.
If we were teachers, we would have a class where there are no grades. Okay. It's just
no
the
tests.
Experience.
Yes. Well, if there's quizzes, it'd be quizzes for fun, not quizzes for grades.
Conversation, to spark a conversation.
Yeah. Just keep curious out there. Okay.
Keep curious, everyone. That should be our sign off. Wait, have we talked about that before?
We talked about that on the episode when we were a little zooted. So.
Well, hey, sometimes that gets the creative juices flowing.
It really does.
We do need a good, unique sign-off in case everyone want to make merch. And we'd have Keep Curious and spell Curious with a K.
Yes, crosswords also with a K.
Or spell it with 2 Qs. You know, some people do. Some people have, Cozy Corner, but then they change the C's to K's, even though they're both C's. So we could do, Keep Curious with a Q.
We both have C's in our first names, so we could also, moving forward, only sign off with K's in our names or Q's.
Chelsea with a K.
Or Quelsey with a Q.
Grake.
Kelsey. I love that. I love that for us. So keep listening, listeners, and keep curious, as always. And again, thanks for listening to our 100th episode Bonanza. Part 1 and Part 2 are up now. If you're curious, like I said, the YouTube is a great experience. And you're not allowed to laugh at us, so that's the only rule. But other than that, we don't have a poll this week.
Nope. We don't. Just, logistically does not work out. We had nothing to ask you, everyone, so sorry.
We had no curiosity about you these past 2 weeks.
I didn't even think about you guys once. Just kidding. I think of you all the time. Every morning when I read our podcast reviews on iTunes.
It's like her self-affirmation every morning in the mirror. She just reads all the positive iTunes reviews. Yeah. Speaking of which, leave us an iTunes review.
Nice segue.
Thank you. But does that mean we should move into our hits and our shits?
Well, did you want to talk about, since we don't have Polapalooza, do you want to talk about Puzzle Palooza?
Yes. So we could talk about well, I actually had Lollapuzzoola in my hits and shits.
Puzzle Pazoola. Lollapuzzoola. All right, that's fair.
Okay. All right, give me a second here. I'm pulling up my notes because I have notes. Just a couple notes here and there.
Chelsea went to Lollapuzzoola. I did not. If you want me to go to something, don't plan it the weekend before my 30th birthday. Okay,
it's
I'm
true.
booked out for the week.
She's booked out. She's traveling to Alaska for the third time this year. So
not Alaska. Okay, I was in southern Utah. But yes,
basically Alaska for the southern United States.
Similar, yeah. It's the Alaska of the Southwest. Yeah, that's why I didn't go, but I'm glad that Chelsea was able to go.
We were personally called out on social media, and so I felt that I didn't have a choice. I was coerced into attending Lollapuzzoola. Thank you. I'm assuming it was Brian who called us out on Twitter. Hashtag love to hate you. We are enemies, our podcast yes. and theirs. Anyway, but I actually am really glad because I think one of my New Year's resolutions on one of our New Year's episodes was to do a crossword tournament. And I wanted to drag Grace along with me, but alas, of course, she conveniently planned turning 30 for the week of Lollapuzzoola.
Sorry,
so
I'm a Virgo.
She's a Virgo, and so I had to do the Aquarius thing and do it myself. I did invite a close friend of mine to join me on my pairs team because I was intimidated, and I had very little faith in my abilities to, perform to measure up to the other people, solving. There are some heavy hitters, solving that day.
Don't let them intimidate you, Chelsea.
Too late.
With a K.
Too late. And we had one listener write to us on Twitter and actually tried to guess what our team name was because we were keeping it a secret. Because I wanted to see if any of our listeners could figure it out. And somebody wrote to us and they guessed incorrectly, although their guess was very nice. They guessed that we were the Derps, and the Derps, I think, placed 18th in the pairs division, which is more than I could ever hope and dream to get at any crossword tournament from between now and my death. Mm-hmm. So I am here now to reveal our crossword name, or our team name for the pairs division. We were Benny Franks and Friend, and we placed at grand old 135. Okay.
Out of how many? Do you remember?
I think like 40 or like 45, 145 or something like that. So like we were really at the end. And I think like the last 5 were people who like solved the first puzzle and then didn't show up for the rest. So like we were scraping bottom of the barrel here. But here's the thing. The way the scoring works, it's not only like how well you solve the puzzles, like correct squares or blank squares are, correct squares are positive, blank squares and incorrect squares are negative points, but they also factor in times. So even though I did really well with our close friend on puzzles 1, 2, 3, and 5, our time was like, not as fast as some of the other pairs. So, solving the first puzzle in 9 minutes and the top pair solver for that puzzle, they solved it in like 3. So like that's the difference we're talking about in skill level. So,
well, Chelsea and I, we like to savor the solving process. We just don't like to rush through things because,
it's true.
We enjoy life. Like to smell the roses.
It's true. But first of all, I love our team name because Benny Franks makes appearances throughout our podcast in varying and surprising ways. Sometimes Benjamin Franklin shows up in the most strange moments in our topics.
When you least expect him, but when you need him the most.
Exactly. So we had to, honor Benny and use him as our team name. But I do want to shout out the winners. Will Nediger won the entire tournament. So congratulations. And the runners-up were Tyler Hinman and Jeff Davidson. So congrats to you. And then the pairs division winner, which was not me. The winners were Vivian Cooperberg and Yuval Wigderson. So good job. Very good.
Congrats.
maybe we'll see you next year under a new pseudonym. So
we'll be working out every day. We're going to show up so buff next year to
it's true.
Lollapuzzoola.
It's true. So thanks for having us. It was fun. Although
yes.
I did mess up when the tournament started, even though there was many reminders that was like, this is Eastern time, this is Eastern time. For whatever reason, I thought it was not Eastern time, or I thought Central time. I tricked myself into thinking Central time was before Eastern time. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened. So I ended up having to solve the first 2 puzzles alone, even though I was in the Paris division.
But you did well on them, right?
I did fine, but still.
Yeah.
Still.
Well, I'm proud of you, and I'm glad you went, and I think... but if it's always at the end of August, next year my birthday won't be as special. This is my 30th birthday, so it was kind of a big deal.
It was a big deal. She had to go to Alaska. Utah.
Yeah.
So,
well, thanks for that. For the recap.
You're welcome. Shall we get into the real hits and shits? The meat, if you will, of the episode.
Oh, wait. Speaking of our British accents, we had... This happened like 2 weeks ago. I didn't have it in my hits and shits, but we had a listener tweet us who is English.
Yes.
And she told us that our English accents weren't that bad, which honestly shocked. But she did say, she said Americans say Shire, like Wilshire, but it should be Shur, Wilshire.
Wilshire. Okay.
Yeah. Which is how they pronounce the street in LA too. Because I remember one time I called it Wilshire and everyone laughed at me. They were like, do you think you're in Lord of the Rings? It's Wilshire.
Yes, actually, we do think that we're in Lord of the Rings. That's our daily fantasy.
We do. Why would you even ask that question?
Why? Yeah, okay. I dare you to come to Chicago and try to pronounce some of the names of the streets here, okay?
Yeah.
It's not
Devon.
Yeah.
It's not Devon. It's Devon.
Okay. And it's not Paulina. It's Paulina.
Rhymes with Orangina.
It's true.
That's not how you pronounce that drink, right? It is Orangina, but... I'm going to petition to change that.
Oh, we have a lot of laughs. Let's laugh our way into the puzzles. Why don't you start us off?
Me?
Did you do puzzles during your birthday trip?
I did do some puzzles here.
Okay.
Let's see. Wait, there's one I really liked. I enjoyed the Tuesday, August 24th New York Times puzzle by Jesse Bullock and Ross Trudeau. No surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought the revealer was fun. 32 across. With 39 and 44 across, promise that Aladdin sings to Jasmine in a hint to the answers to the starred clues. So it was, I can show you on one line. And then, or I can show, then right below that, you, and then below that, the world. And it's all, perfectly symmetrical, right in the middle of the puzzle. And then the other, the other 4 clues that it hints at all have to do with maps and stuff. So, for example, 60 across is iconic photograph taken by Voyager 1 at the request of Carl Sagan. Pale blue dot. 11 down, computer program that blurs out military installations. Google Earth. And then there's also Pocket Atlas and Planetarium.
Yes, that was a good puzzle. I also had that as something that I really liked. And speaking of, I feel like there's a lot of sky-themed clues and answers this week. And I don't know if that's because this is some sort of important week for NASA or history of aeronautics or something or other. But Pale Blue Dot, that also appeared in a different puzzle from a couple weeks ago for the Friday, August 13th, New Yorker by Anna Schechtman. But listen to this, 23 across. Subject of the photograph, the blue marble. And the answer was Earth. So what is this photograph actually called? Is it the pale blue dot? Or is it the blue marble? What is it? Someone tell me.
Oh, I thought maybe you were going to drop.
Oh, I didn't look it up. I should have looked it up. I should have come prepared.
There's no way to know.
There's no way to know. We don't have Google, so...
Wait, I forgot. I did highlight the clue for Planetarium was facility where things are always looking up, ? Another fun clue from this crossword was 12 down, vehicle with Vatican City registration plates. And it's the Pope Mobile, and I feel like I saw somewhere that the Pope actually doesn't, or one Pope at some time didn't like that it was called the Pope Mobile because he thought it was disrespectful, but can't change the name because that's what everyone calls it.
That's what everyone calls it. And also it just brings a little bit of fun to the world.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to the Pope about being respectful.
Can we get the Pope on the line, please?
Yeah.
About his Versace slippers. Anyway. Speaking of the Anna Schechtman puzzle that also had that famous Earth Carl Sagan photograph clued into it, some other good clues from that: 31 across, quality time, words of affirmation, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch per a 1992 pop psychology classic. And the answer was love languages, of course. Yes. We've talked about love languages here, I believe, a couple times. If you're not familiar with love languages, I actually genuinely encourage you to look it up online, because I do think it is a helpful tool in understanding not only a romantic partner, but just partnerships in general. Like if you have intimate friends or whatever, if you are loving somebody in the way that you like to be loved and not the way that they like to be loved, you may find yourself having some friction in your relationships.
Although I feel like the guy who invented love languages, there's some sketchy things about him.
It's possible. I mean, if he's a guy.
Yeah, anything can happen.
Anything can happen. Not to generalize here. What else do I got? Oh, and then this one was kind of interesting. 46 down. Jack Nicholson's line, "Here's Johnny" in The Shining, for example. And the answer was ad lib. I didn't know that.
Well, I think it's originally from the Johnny Carson show.
Oh, it for sure is.
Well, that whole scene was just one take too. BT dubs.
Grace knows a lot about The Shining.
Yeah. Well, they only had. Well, I don't know if they only had one door, but you know that he has to axe down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Jack Nicholson. That scene has been the background of my phone for like 10 years.
She won't change it. Not for anybody.
It's, to be fair, it's like a painting of his face through the door that was painted on a big building.
Mm-hmm. Is that in Miami?
Yeah. It was at Art Basel in Miami.
Oh, yes,
my mom took the photo for me, and it has been I can't change it now. Like, it's the best phone background in the world.
It's true.
Here, I'll entice everyone to look on our YouTube. I'll show it really quick to the camera if you want to see it. Stop it. There it is.
Whoa!
It's glory.
Seriously.
A little Easter egg for the, not an Easter egg, a little treat.
A treat for the YouTube watchers. What else do I got here? Oh, I really liked the Thursday, August 26th, New York Times by Ashish Vensarkar. The theme is really interesting. Well, it was fun, and it took me it took us longer than a second to figure out the theme. But when we got it, we were like, oh. So the puzzle was called Cross Country, and it was based off of the revealer 40 across, one way to run, or a hint to 4 geographical intersections found on this grid. The answer was cross country, which makes me think, we're going to have countries, the names of countries crossing each other somewhere in the grid. And so basically these answers were clued, but they had an additional square in their answer. And with that additional square, that letter that you have in that additional square creates a country name. But without that additional square, you just have the regular answer to the across and down clues. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let's do an example. For instance, 9 across, not a chance. The answer was no way. And then that crossed with 11 down, title character in a classic John Cleese comedy, and the answer was Wanda. But if you were to add an R strategically into No Way and Wanda, you would get Norway crossing with Rwanda.
It took me a little bit. At first, I was like, Norway is not a chance with an Australian accent. Like, Nar,
Claire, Nar. Yeah.
Norway.
Another good one was 72 across. First airline to complete a round-the-world flight, and the answer was Pan Am, and that crossed with 57 down. Grab by pinching as an ice cube, and the answer was Tong. But if you were to add the letter A strategically into both of those answers, you would get Panama crossed with Tonga. So those are 2 different countries. So that was fun.
Yes, I enjoyed that puzzle too. Some other clues from there. 23 across, important part of a taxi is the horn.
True.
And then I learned 2 down, kissing related, oscular.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Right. And if I were just to read that real quick, like breezing through, I would think it was ocular.
Yeah.
But no, there's an extra letter in there, and that means of the mouth kissy kissy.
Have you ever kissed someone before?
Oh my God, we can't talk about that live on air, Grace.
You're turning red.
No, I'm not. This is why I cannot do this podcast any longer with this girl.
That really just pushed over the edge. I also learned 29 down. Bat Appreciation Month, appropriately, October.
Yes, that's very appropriate.
Who knew?
Have you ever kissed a bat before?
Oh my God. I touched one with my foot once because I thought it was dead, but it wasn't. It hissed at me.
I love a good bat. Bats are fun.
Bats are so cute.
Yes. Another theme that I liked is from the Sunday, August 22nd New York Times by Stephen McCarty. The theme was called Resettling Letterings. And basically, the answers to certain clues are anagrams of words that are in the clue. An example, 23 across. 2004 film about a group of maligners. And the answer is Mean Girls. Mean Girls is an anagram of maligners.
Oh.
Right?
Smart.
Hello.
How do these people think of this?
I have no idea.
They're born more brain cells than us.
Yeah. And then this one, 64 across. Many relationships are instigated on one. And the answer is dating site. Dating site is an anagram of instigated. Right? I liked this one. 46 across. Sort of schematic for Christian education. And the answer is catechism, which is an anagram for schematic. Like, hello.
How does your brain work? Maybe they just looked at a website.
Is this thing
of
on?
Anagrams. Yeah. Mine doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no.
Are you done with that puzzle, or are there others?
Yeah, go ahead.
I liked the Friday, August 27th puzzle, my birthday puzzle. Thank you to Robin Weintraub, one of my favorites, for making this puzzle on my birthday just for me. One across, what takes a licking and keeps on sticking, question mark. Stamp, that was just a fun opener.
Yes.
20 across, hook-ups for a camera. Sex tapes.
Yes. Oh, steamy on Friday.
Pretty raunchy. 6 down, stuck-up couples at weddings. Cake toppers.
And 24 down, brain power, telekinesis. I loved that one.
I love that one too. I was almost going to do that as my topic, but...
Ooh. Instead, she's doing cake toppers. No.
Yeah, it's too broad.
If you're interested in learning about stamps, you can tune into episode 84. Keep us posted. I talk about stamps and how expensive some of them can be in the world.
Yeah. Everything you need to know about stamps.
It's true.
In that episode.
I have a couple shits. Well, okay.
Ooh.
Only one of them is a legitimate shit. And it's because it pissed me off.
Formed.
It made me mad. And the other is more of like a, am I reading into this too much? Okay, so I'll start with the, am I like thinking about this too much one? It comes from the Wednesday, August 25th New York Times by Adam Vincent. 15 across. Material for toy darts. And the answer was Nerf.
Okay.
Nerf is not a material. It is a company. And I looked this one up. I looked, what are Nerf darts made out of? And they're made out of foam, which it says everywhere on the internet. And I couldn't find anywhere if it's called, if they've copyrighted or trademarked it to be called Nerf. But even so, like, is Nerf, like, would you call Nerf a material? I wouldn't call Nerf a material. Am I crazy?
Casually. I don't know if I would in a crossword.
Anyway, so that was a thing that I don't have an answer for. I just want to float it. Something for everybody to germinate on. Also from that puzzle, this is not a shit. This is just a funny little thing. I will get to my legitimate shit later. 43 down, dressage competitor. And there was an R in. It starts with an R. And when I was filling this in, I immediately put rodeo in. Because to me, rodeo is the natural competition for dressage.
Yes.
Well, rodeo was wrong. And I feel like this was a missed opportunity for Adam Vincent to stir the pot between rodeo and dressage. The answer was rider. Yes, because a rider is the competitor in dressage, which is boring, but also true. Anyway, so that was not a shit. That was just a fun little solving mishap that I had. I felt like I needed to tell everybody about. My actual shit. This one actually, like, when I filled the answer, and I was like legitimately frustrated. 26 down. Animal personification of Christ in fiction.
Aslan?
You piss me off so much. So the animal is a lion, but they had Aslan as the answer. Why would they say animal personification if they were looking for the name of the lion? Right?
Well, Aslan is the animal personification. How would you want, like, just personification of Christ in children's novel?
Well, they specified animal specifically. Yeah. And so
like if they didn't say animal, then would you be...
Or like name of animal or something. I don't know. I think like maybe because it took me so long to get the answer, because the immediate first thought I had was, oh, lion, because of Aslan.
Yeah.
But lion didn't fit. So I was like, okay, what other animals has Christ been personified as? Like literally every animal, right? And I'm like, but which one could it be? And then finally I get to the end and I fill in Aslan and I'm just like, that was the first answer that I had. But Aslan is a name. It isn't the animal.
I feel you.
Maybe I'm the only one who cares because it took me so long to get there.
Don't say that.
But that's where I'm at this week, okay? We're getting down we're getting down to this, the nitty-gritty.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's hard to find a shit because we're so nice.
We are. We're just like really, really lovely people. And that comes from that Aslan answer comes from the Saturday, August 28th New York Times by Julian Lim. I did like some answers from that. One across, divine instrument ? Was tarot card.
Mm-hmm.
And then 8 down, area with lots of schools. The answer was reef. And then 38 down, stockholder. The answer was soup. I liked that one a lot. Stock, space, holder, soup. Because soup holds... Anyway, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. Anyway, that's it, and that's all this week, my dear friends, for me.
That's all I got, too. Should we flip a coin?
I think it's time to flip the coin.
And get this thing started, baby?
Let's get this party started. All right. I'm flipping the coin now.
Tequila.
Tails.
Me.
Wow,
right,
great.
Let's do this, baby. My topic comes from your much-hated Saturday, August 28th New York Times puzzle by Julian Lim. No, you didn't hate it. You had fair points. 13 down. Popular brand on New Year's Eve informally.
Moet.
Yes, but actually the T is pronounced. I looked it up.
Moet?
Yeah, Moet.
Moet. Okay. I've always called it Moet.
Usually in French... I'm sorry.
We have a visitor. A black cat has appeared. Another reason why you should be watching us on YouTube.
He has to give me a hug because I was gone all week, and now I'm going to put him down. Thank you.
We love you. He literally just looks like a piece of fur. Oh, so cute.
Just another reason to watch us on YouTube. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about Moet. I'm talking about champagne in general, or champagne.
I love this topic. This is kind of like a departure for you.
I know. I was like, Chelsea might do this topic. Seems like a Chelsea topic, but I had fun doing it. So
amazing.
Let's get into it. So what is champagne? Most people know this, but champagne is sparkling wine that specifically comes from the Champagne region of northeastern France. And some people use the term champagne willy-nilly for any sparkling wine like Prosecco or Cava, but do not let the French people hear you, okay? They were granted the legal exclusive right to call their wines champagne by the Treaty of Madrid, signed in 1891, and the Treaty of Versailles reaffirmed this. So, champagne belongs to them, specifically that one region.
Yes. We've talked a little bit about European food regulation laws on other food topics, like, when I talked a little bit about Stilton cheese, like things like that. Like there are some very strict food regulation laws in Europe. Not like we have here. It's just different over there, okay?
But the real question is, does France really deserve this right to champagne? We'll talk about that. So I got most of my information from an article on mental floss called A Brief History of Champagne by Ethan Trex, and another article on ParisUnlocked.com called History of Champagne, How the English Helped Birth Bubbly, and Other Facts by Courtney Traub. So, how is champagne made? Let's get this out of the way. It is made by a process called méthode champenoise. Excuse my French for this whole episode.
Literally.
And for the rest of my life. Okay. The grapes are harvested, pressed, and undergo a first round of fermentation, like any other old wine out there. The acidic results of this process are then blended and bottled with a bit of yeast and sugar so that it can undergo a secondary fermentation in the bottle. And this secondary fermentation is what makes it bubbly.
2 times, baby. It's always the charm.
Mm-hmm. The new yeast starts doing its work on the sugar, and then the yeast dies, and it becomes what's known as lees, L-E-E-S. The bottles are then stored horizontally so that the wine can age on lees for at least 15 months. After this aging, winemakers turn the bottles upside down so the lees can settle in the bottle's neck, and once all the dead yeast has settled, the bottles are reopened, the yeast is removed, and some sugar, known as dosage, is added to determine the sweetness of the champagne. You know, some champagne is more dry, so the dosage kind of determines that, and it's sealed back up with a nice, strong cork.
Mm-hmm.
So why is the Champagne region so special? The northern location is cooler than other wine regions in France, and it gives the grapes more acidity, and the porous, chalky soil of the area aids in drainage. So that's it. Easy as that. Thank
Easy
you,
as
Champagne.
pie.
But how did Champagne come about? There is a commonly believed story about a little monk by the name of Dom Perignon.
Oh, that name might be familiar to any of the drinkers out there in the world.
Yes. So the story goes, Dom Perignon, oh gosh, I'm like,
you're doing great.
Nervous and I'm tripping over myself.
You're doing great.
Was a monk who lived at the Abbey of Haute-Vie in the late 1600s, who had experienced a happy accident when he opened a bottle of wine that had been bottled before it had been completely fermented. The wine continued to ferment in the bottle, and when Dom Perignon went to open it, the cork popped out and the wine fizzed and sparkled.
Ooh.
He was intrigued and he took a little sip as a treat, and he was delighted by the tickling sensation of the bubbles, and supposedly he called out to the other monks, "Brothers, come quickly, I'm drinking stars," which is cute.
It is extremely cute. We love a little bit of carbonation in this household.
I didn't realize so many monks worked in like wineries.
And also like breweries, like, you know, in Germany, they're the ones that like made the beer for, you know, Oktoberfest initially. So
yes,
they had nothing else to do but pray to God and make alcohol.
He then went on to develop a method of making sure his wine was always that fizzy. And while the story is fun and cute, it's not completely true. So Dom Perignon, he was real, and he did work as a cellar master at the Abbey of Haute-Vie for most of his life, and he did help acquire vineyards and create non-sparkling wine. So he did do a lot of stuff to improve the method of creating just regular wine. However, his work was very well documented, and there's no mention of him ever discovering or creating sparkling wine. So, the truth is, in Dom Perignon's time, bubbles in wine were seen as a bad thing. So when it accidentally did happen, like when the wine was bottled before it was fermented, it was referred to as devil's wine or pop-top wine.
Ooh.
Because sometimes this devil's wine, it would explode in the cellar, sending debris around the room, setting off a chain reaction of other bottles. So not only did it waste wine, but it also was unsafe for the poor monks who were working down there in the cellar at the time when they were popping.
Yeah.
So it made sense that they wanted to avoid this. So why does this story exist, and why is it so, heavily circulated?
Tell me.
Well, it was told by Perignon's successor at the Abbey, Dom Groussard, probably as a marketing tool to raise the profile of the vineyards at Haute-Vie.
Capitalism, am I right?
And then, speaking of capitalism, in the 1900s, the champagne industry itself started spreading this myth about Dom Perignon to create a sense of mystique around the region and the product. The quote, "Brothers, come quickly, I'm drinking stars," was seen on ads. And then also saying that it was created by like a lowly monk made champagne a drink for everyone when it was previously only for like aristocrats and royals. In 1921, Moet and Chandon created the very popular brand of champagne called Dom Perignon. So,
okay,
it worked. All right.
It did. And now it's in crosswords.
Yes. But let's get into the real story. So, the real story is a little less exciting.
Okay.
The region of Champagne was always trying to outdo its more prestigious winemaking neighbor, Burgundy. But the wines made in Champagne, they were generally thinner, weaker, more acidic than the Burgundy ones. Champagne's northerly position created some issues around the winter time because the chilly winters would interrupt the fermentation process, leaving undigested sugars and yeast in the bottles to form carbon dioxide. Oftentimes, the bottles would explode and cause issues that we talked about earlier, but the bottles that were able to withstand the pressure were served to French royalty. In 1715, the Duc d'Orléans began serving locally produced sparkling wine at his court in Paris, where he was entertaining wealthy and famous guests. The drink became something that was generally only accessible to the high aristocracy, and its popularity exploded among Parisian elites.
Ooh.
So even though winemakers were still trying to avoid the sometimes dangerous bubbles, the French elite couldn't get enough of it. They wanted to basically flaunt the fact that they had access to this extremely rare
more
of drink. Exactly. By the 18th century, winemakers opened up houses in Champagne and started to compete to serve at royal banquets and fancy parties, one of this being Moet and whatever it was, Chandon. Moet. Okay. But aside from rich French people, there was another group of people who were obsessed with sparkling wine.
Who?
The English. Many historians maintain that it was the English, not the French, who invented the thick glass champagne bottle and the cork in the 17th century.
Ooh.
So basically the English would import large quantities of non-sparkling wine from the Champagne region in barrels, and they would bottle it themselves, and they liked it when it bubbled, so they found a way to ensure that the bottling process was able to contain the bubbles and not explode. They used a double fermentation process, like we talked about earlier, which is now the official method coined by the Champagne region in France. They also used cork imported from Portugal, which, by the way, is the largest producer of cork in the world. Fun fact about Portugal.
Okay.
But they used cork to stop up the heavier glass containers. Before the second fermentation, they fortified wine with sugar, molasses, and spices that were stolen from Caribbean countries they had colonized. And this offered one of the first ways to successfully, repeatedly bottle sparkling wine so that it wouldn't explode.
Wow.
There is proof of this. British scientist Christopher Merritt presented his findings on such advances in a paper for the London Royal Society in 1662. They basically outlined the corking and the thick bottles. 1662, that was before Dom Perignon worked at the winery and before the Champagne region secured exclusive rights to champagne.
You heard it here first.
British and French people, fight it out in our review section of iTunes.
Please. Gosh, the Brits and the French, they've been fighting for their lives for years.
We thought it was all fine after the Channel, but who knows? There's also French infighting about who invented champagne, because there is another region in France, an abbey in Carcassonne, and they are documented as making a sparkling wine in 1531.
Okay.
Their version is called Blanquette de Limoux, and it's bottled before it's finished fermenting. It doesn't do the double fermentation process, but they've been making sparkling wine even longer. So,
damn. Okay.
Wherever it started, the English obsession with sparkling wine and champagne helped speed the industry towards becoming what it is today. So aside from the bottling and corking, the British may also have helped dry champagne or brut champagne become the default, because when champagne first came out, it was very sugary and sweet to cover up any issues in fermentation or, if they were using subpar ingredients. The Germans, French, and Americans especially liked the champagne very sweet, but the British liked the drier style. And since the British were buying so much champagne, extra dry styles started to gain in popularity, and today dry champagne is the general rule instead of the exception. So,
I like sweet champagne, but I also like dry champagne. So, who cares?
I'd say I'm not even that big of a fan of champagne because it hurts my mouth.
Too much of the with the carbonation at the same time. It's like, oh, I can't do it all.
It's a lot. That just goes to show I would never make it in French aristocracy.
It's a lot of mouth sensations happening. Is that an example of oscular sensations?
Maybe. What if we kissed with a mouthful of champagne?
I'm sure there's people that would like to do that with you.
We'll ask around. Okay, so let's do some fun facts about champagne.
Okay.
A champagne bottle can have a pressure of 100 psi compared to a car tire, which is around 32 psi. So
it's dangerous to open a bottle of champagne.
Yeah, it's 3 times the pressure of a car tire.
Whew.
The most expensive bottle of champagne in the world is Goût du Diamant, a diamond-covered champagne bottle that sells for $2 million. Without the diamonds, it's only a couple $100,000. So if you're trying to save on costs, just get the bottle without the diamonds.
Just like have them uncork it and pour it into like a plastic pitcher or something and send it my way. Like, honestly.
Yeah. I don't care what it comes in. Actually, I feel like opening champagne is the most fun part about it.
It is fun. It is fun.
Speaking of opening champagne, sabrage is a term for opening a champagne bottle with an actual sword. It's only done in certain ceremonial occasions, and the wielder uses the blunt side of the sword. It was made famous by Napoleon and his army when they celebrated victories in battle.
Okay.
The longest recorded flight of a champagne cork was 177 feet, or 54 meters, which is more than half of a football field.
Wow. That's the power we're talking about that's in that bottle. That bottle is like begging to come out. It just pop right off. Shout
out to the English for finding a way to control it.
Thanks. It's like the one good thing.
Party trick alert. Dropping a raisin into champagne causes it to travel from the top of the glass to the bottom continuously. So keep some raisins on you at all times.
What do you mean continuously?
Like it just goes up and down in the champagne.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. I do not have any raisins on me, but I will get some for that particular trick.
Once we get out of quarantine, you will need some.
Remember when we, the last time we drank champagne?
At the office?
No.
Oh.
At the Chicago Theater.
Oh, yes.
With your champagne sugar cubes.
Oh my gosh, I got these. We were watching Cats, of course, the musical.
No. I think it was Eric Andre.
No, the sugar cubes were at Cats.
I think Eric Andre.
Maybe it was. Okay. Well, anyways, we were at a theater and I had gotten these sugar cubes from like, I don't know, it was like a prize I won at a bridal shower or something. And you're supposed to put them in champagne and they fizz. And they're cute and, you know, you think it would make it taste good, but I couldn't get them out of the freaking package. They were packed in there so tight. I spent like an hour.
It was insane.
And I had sugar all over me and everyone was watching me. But like at that point, I just had to do it. I don't even remember what we did to finally get it open.
And when we finally put them in the champagne, it was like...
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened. No taste incentive. It was truly a waste of our time. But it's a story. I guess it's a story now. There may still be sugar on the floor of Chicago Theater from where we sat.
Yeah, sorry about that. Champagne corks can fly out at speeds near 25 miles per hour. So that's why the monks didn't like to make champagne.
Be careful. Don't like stand in front of somebody, especially someone who's inexperienced at opening champagne. Don't stand in front of them. Like, you could lose an eye.
Yeah, pop an eye, lose a tooth.
No good.
The tradition of spraying champagne after sporting victory started in 1967 after the 24 hours of Le Mans car race, when American winners Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt carried a bottle of champagne to the winner's podium. Gurney looked down and saw team owner Carroll Shelby and Ford Motor CEO Henry Ford standing with some journalists and decided to have a bit of fun and spray everyone with champagne. So
let's get a bottle of champagne and take it to the park and just spray randos. What do you think?
Of course, Americans started that.
Of course.
We are garish.
I kind of want to just get champagne now.
I kind of want to too.
I actually
and say it's champagne.
Yes, it's cheaper. There's this new drink that I want to try. Listen to this. It's
Tell me.
Empress Gin, which is the beautiful like purple gin, plus lilac simple syrup, plus Prosecco, plus lemon juice. And it makes it's basically like an alcoholic sparkling lemonade.
That sounds good. I'd drink that.
I would drink it too, but the thing is like Empress Gin on Drizzly, it's like $60. And I'm like, I got to call all the different stores around here and see if they got it or I don't know how to get it shipped to me. Anyway, this is my personal dilemma, but.
Well, if we do make that, we'll tweet about it.
Yes, we will.
Speaking of drinks, this is a little fun tidbit for our listeners. So, you know, in Utah, there's a lot of Mormons, obviously, and they can't have caffeine and, you know, well, they can't have a lot of things, but sugar is like one vice they can really imbibe in.
Oh.
And so there are, you know how like here we have like cupcake shops? There's like soda shops in Utah. And they just basically make sodas, non-caffeinated ones. So you can't find Coke. You can get like the caffeine-free Diet Coke, but they have like Sprite, Dr. Pepper, and then they mix it with like simple syrups. So like it was like Sprite mixed with blueberry, raspberry, and I don't know. It was really good.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
That kind of sounds like I would be overwhelmed with sugar. It reminds me of the, you know, in Epcot, the Coca-Cola room that they have, you can go into, and they have all the Coca-Colas and different soda flavors from all around the world. That's what that reminds me of.
I did drink it before going on a hike in 100-degree weather, and then I paid for it later. I'll just say that without going into details. But my stomach was not happy with me.
But was your heart happy?
Yes.
That's all that matters. Screw
my oscular region was happy.
Very well. Thank you for the champagne info. I love that.
Thanks. Well, guess it's your turn now.
I guess I gotta go now. So my topic comes from the August 22nd New York Times by Stephen McCarty. 86 down. Appetizers or desserts at a diner? And appetizers and desserts are quoted, and the answer was menu page.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm going to be talking about diners today. We got a food-filled episode for everybody.
You're gonna make me hungry. I didn't have a big enough lunch today.
I'm sorry. I'm also very hungry right now, and I'm going to get off this call. I'm going to make fried rice. I'm very excited about it. I'm like craving fried rice. Anyway, but you can't really get fried rice at a diner. So let's talk about diners. Some general diner information. A diner is a small restaurant. It's predominantly found in the northeastern, southeastern, and midwestern United States. They serve mostly staples from American cuisine like hamburgers, french fries, club sandwiches, and other simple, easy-to-make food. The atmosphere is extremely casual. You're usually served by a wait staff, and most diners operate on extended hours for shift workers, in particular, or they just stay open 24 hours a day. And just to say, you can find variations or different types of diners throughout the entire world, but I will be focusing on the traditional American diner today. Yeehaw. I got most of my information from some really awesome articles. The History of American Diners from Paste Magazine by Joan Russell. A Life Devoted to the American Diner from Smithsonian and Sarah Safian. The History of the American Diner on Epicurious by Michael Stern. And then there's a website, AmericanDreamDiner.com as well.
Wow, who knew? There's so much information about diners out there.
Lots of info about diners. And there's actually a book that I want to get now after I did all this research. Anyway, so let's get into it. Diners, diners, diners. It all starts with a man named Walter Scott. He was a part-time printer and type compositor at a newspaper in Providence, Rhode Island during the mid-1800s. And around 1858, when Scott was 17 years old, he started to supplement his income by selling sandwiches and coffee from a basket to newspaper night workers and patrons of men's club rooms. Okay. And by 1872, his business was so lucrative that he was like, screw this, I'm quitting printmaking. And so then he decided to, sell food at night full time. He repurposed a horse-drawn covered express wagon to serve sandwiches, coffee, pies, and eggs, which he parked outside of the Providence Journal newspaper office.
It was like the first food truck.
The first food truck, exactly. And then perhaps unknowingly, Scott inspired the birth of one of America's most recognized icons, the diner. So thanks to Scott, both individual entrepreneurs and companies began manufacturing their own food wagons for sale. So these companies would manufacture the wagons and sell them to people who would then drive their little wagons around, kind of like food trucks, right?
Yeah.
One such man was T.H. Buckley from Worcester, Massachusetts. He founded the Worcester Lunch Car Company, and his improved lunch wagons, among those from other lunch wagon companies, had larger wheels so that you could go over cobblestones easier. They had overhangs so that people could stand underneath and eat their food. They had murals painted on the sides, lettering, frosted glass windows, and then the interiors of the wagons contained basic stoves and an icebox. Some even allowed customers to stand inside, protected from rain and snow. Or you could actually sit inside on stools at counters, depending on how big your little wagon was, which is kind of cool. Big wagon. And these new wagons were called, quote, night lunch wagons or night owls. And they began to appear in many New England towns and cities during the late 1800s. They would come out at dusk, and they would basically pickup business after restaurants were closed. So they would serve workers on late shifts, newspapermen, theater goers, anyone out after dark who was hungry and looking for an inexpensive hot meal to eat. You would go up to the wagon, you'd buy your food from the window, and then you would take it and sit on the curb and eat it. It's exactly like a food truck. Now, you would you see a bunch of food trucks in a parking lot, you go up to the window, you buy your food, and you go sit on a curb, unless it's like they've got picnic tables, right?
Nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed. So the lunch wagons became very popular because workers and pedestrians could purchase inexpensive meals basically at any time of the day. And restaurants at this time usually closed at 8 p.m. And so if you were out seeing a play or, a boxing match, or you worked really late and you were starving when you got off, and you're like, I got to walk 2 hours in the snow home to Susie and Billy, you could stop and get like a ham and egg sandwich or something from the wagon by the newspaper office. Okay. So folks started referring to these cars or these wagons as lunch cars, and then it kind of morphed into dining cars, which around 1924 shortened even further to diner.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. And lunch wagons became so abundant on streets that many towns ended up passing ordinances to restrict their hours of operations. So owners had to find new ways to operate or to circumvent the law. And they did this by placing their wagons on semi-permanent locations. And the very first stationary lunch car was from 1913 and made by a man named Jerry O. Mahoney. Jerry O. Mahoney was the founder of one of the first of what would then become dozens of diner factories in New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts that manufactured and shipped all the diners in the United States. Pretty cool. Right.
Like how you ship a diner.
They're all made prefab. Well, from this time, they're all made prefab. So basically, it would show up in a big box, and you would open it up and put it together. And houses in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, you could also order from catalogs, and they would ship them to you prefab.
You can still do that today.
You can still do that today. I bet you, if we went on a little walking tour in Chicago, we could see a bunch of prefab houses that are still around to the day.
Let's organize that.
I would actually love to do that. I think Grace is being facetious.
No, I would do it.
Oh, okay. Well, if we do that as well as the Empress Gin thing, we'll let you know, listeners.
We do both. Roadie sody.
On the same day. Okay?
Yeah. A little drink for the walk.
For the walk. I love that. All right. So, moving on. World War I breaks out, okay? And diners needed to begin catering to women because at this point they'd kind of only really been catering to men because late night shift workers were predominantly more male than female. But, World War I happens and then all the men are going over to overseas and then the diners are like, we don't have anybody to buy our late night ham and cheese sandwiches, right? So, but because they were predominantly geared to men, they found that they needed to start rebranding a little bit, okay? A lot of diners at the time kind of had poor reputations because most of the time, not only were they mostly geared towards men, but the owners were mostly interested in turning a profit. So they weren't actually upkeeping the cars, but they were also late night and 24-hour type deals. So they were kind of seedy, a little shady. And women aren't going to be like, I'm going to go out at midnight and go to the shady little wagon on the corner.
Yeah.
That wasn't their shtick, right? And if you've ever heard the term greasy spoon to refer to a diner, it was from this time period that term originates from. So to kind of give you an idea, a greasy spoon is a really cheap, dirty, greasy place to get a bite to eat, okay? They were basically just venues for the unsavory sort to gather late at night. Nowadays, if you hear the word greasy spoon, it's just another term used to refer to the neighborhood diner, okay? Here's a quote from you. For you, not from you, for you. Quote, from their beginnings in the late 1800s as horse-drawn lunch wagons patronized, I should say, by factory workers, diners were known for proletarian eats and bad manners, the opposite of a ladies' tea room, where meals were comely and civility reigned. They were banned in Buffalo, New York, and Atlantic City because of their disreputable characters their late-night hours attracted. Many early diners were made from beat-up and abandoned trolley cars, and their reputations were just as battered. End quote. But like I said, World War One breaks out. Men are off to war. They need to cater to the women now. So a lot of the diners renamed to include Miss in their title. Thinking like that might draw the ladies in.
Yeah.
They added shrubs and flower boxes. They repainted, added wallpaper, and they added booth service as opposed to only counter service. So now a lady could go in and sit down and be served in a booth rather than have to sit at a counter and talk to like a line cook, right?
Yeah. I feel like diners are so wholesome.
Right. Now they are.
Yeah, that's their revamp.
Right. So we're going to throw it back a little bit to Jerry O. Mahoney. He was incredibly important to this rebrand for diners everywhere. He manufactured diners with stained glass windows. You could get words painted on them, and like a big staple would be something like pure food, cleanliness, quick service, and popular prices. All of these things were used to kind of market towards women. And then after this, diners began to develop a reputation as decent places for an average Joe to get a meat and potatoes kind of square meal at a fair price. And standard menu items you might find would be at these new and improved diners, I should say, were meatloaf and mashed potatoes, liver and onions, bacon and eggs, and along with pie and coffee.
Mm.
So then the end of World War II saw a change to the American workforce and also the long-loved tradition of American diners. Up and into the 40s, diners were sold as prefab restaurant kits. Like I said, Jerry Mahoney, he kind of did a lot of the prefab restaurant kits. They were compact, chrome-filled, and ready to serve customers quickly at counters. They were also often called hash houses because you'd get like hashes, like, meat with potatoes, just like hashed together. They served ethnic food of the local clientele, so it wasn't just Americana, but it would be Americana plus like whatever kind of ethnic group lived in that local area.
Yeah, cool.
Which I think is kind of interesting. And then after GIs returned from the war, factories were moving from the cities to the suburbs, and most of the diners were in the cities because that's where the factory workers were. And so factories also had their own like counter service, like lunch place you could eat at the actual factory as a way to like keep workers on property, which is a whole nother issue, which caused a lot of diners to have to like close down. But thankfully, these prefab diners were portable. So diners up and moved to wherever the customers were. And interestingly, diners could also be met with resistance. We already heard that like, New York and Buffalo banned them, right? Atlantic City did the same thing. You could not have any diners inside the city limit of Atlantic City, which is interesting.
That's rich coming from Atlantic City.
It's extremely rich coming from Atlantic City. But ultimately, diners persisted, okay? They occupied this interesting space between suburb and city. They catered to customers on the border between low and middle class and those trying to assimilate into American culture. I think that's really interesting. Diners were at their peak in the 50s. There were 6,000 diners across the country during the 50s. As far as, mostly I think diners, when you think of diners, you think of the East Coast. And I think that's where most of the diners are to this day. But during the 50s, you could find them in Colorado, San Francisco, San Diego, all these different places. Still, diners were out here fighting for their lives, okay? They wanted to be a thing, but the American people had like a different thought going on, right? Because they had to compete with the arrival of fast food in the 60s. So fast food satisfied Americans' desire for fast, quick food here and now. We are a people on the move. We need to eat like that. We can't go inside and sit. Are you kidding me? We don't have time for that.
Yeah, we're going to get our BTS meal at a restaurant?
Yeah, no. Okay. And so the few remaining diner manufacturers during the 60s tried responding to this new threat by remarketing the diners again with neoclassical Tudor and Mediterranean style like exterior and interiors. They had like artificial stonework, dark stained wood, earth tones, fabrics, like, so you can actually, it's interesting, you can look at, if you're on the East Coast and you're like looking at various diners, the more chrome diners are probably from like the 40s and 50s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. But if you're going into a diner that has more stonework, that's probably from the 60s or later. So just like keep that in mind. But then the 70s shows up, right? And a new interest in quote unquote Americana emerges. Americana was in fashion in the 70s. We had Jimmy Carter and his rural Georgia family. People loved that. They ate that up. You got TV shows like All in the Family and Laverne and Shirley. There was even a TV show called Alice set inside of a diner. Because of this idea of like Americana, people were like, let's bring back traditional American values. Here's another quote for you. The renewed interest in diners can be attributed to Americans looking backwards for inspiration and the values of yesterday in a time of moral and economic uncertainty. And this also kind of leads to several national corporate franchises such as Denny's, Silver Diners, and Johnny Rockets, adapting the look and feel of the diner as part of their marketing concepts.
Oh, Johnny Rockets.
Oh, Johnny Rockets and Silver Diner, baby. And so today, there are about 2,000 diners throughout the United States. New Jersey is known as the diner capital of the world. They have 600 plus diners of the 2,000 in the United States.
Per person.
Yes. And the reason New Jersey has so many diners, it's like a perfect mix of all these different elements, right? So we've got a pretty decent transportation system, so buses and trains and all that stuff. But we're also a huge connector state. And I say we, I'm from New Jersey. So we're a huge connector state. So you have like big like interstate highways passing through New Jersey, connecting huge metropolitan areas. And when you have like big transportation systems running through your state, you need places for these people to pull off and get food, right? So that it kind of like makes sense. And there's also a huge working class population in New Jersey. It's all very blue collar. So you need like cheap and affordable fast places to get good meals. And then not to mention, it's still home to many diner manufacturing companies. So, you know, the places where if you and I were to like move out to Nebraska and we wanted to like open a diner, we would like call a factory in New Jersey and be like, send us a prefab diner to Nebraska. And they would do that. It's like, if you're thinking about opening a diner, call New Jersey. They got you covered.
Yeah, just call the state. Get one for you.
They'll put you in touch. Interestingly, there is a large international ethnic influence on the American diner industry in the U.S. due to generations of immigration. For instance, today, more than 500 diners in New York City are Greek-owned.
Oh.
That's crazy. Similarly, growing up in New Jersey, most of the diners I went to were Greek-owned. Just something that is a thing. Eastern European Americans, as well as Polish, Ukraine, Eastern European Jews, Italian American Mexicans, and Cubans also have a notable presence in diner ownership, which is kind of cool. And you can see influences in certain additions to their menus. For instance, Greek moussaka, Slavic blintzes, Jewish matzo ball soup, deli-style sandwiches like corned beef, pastrami, Reubens, bagels, and lox. So it's not all sense. Americana. You know, you got your burgers, your fries. You also got your moussaka. You got your lox.
It's a mixing pot, just like America is.
Hello. And diners are also known as a place of democracy. Okay.
Do tell.
Becky Rand of Becky's Diner in Portland, Maine explains, quote, side by side at my counter sit fishermen and captains of industry, college professors and paranoid schizophrenics. They talk to each other and they talk to those who work here. We are all family, end quote. Okay. And because of this is why, I don't know if you noticed this when politicians are campaigning, but one of like the major stops that politicians make when they go from state to state is they go to local diners and they talk with locals in the diners, because that's the way to get like it's the easiest and fastest way to connect with a local population is you go to the local diner, because that's where the people go. That's kind of like where community is built up from. In my small town, like we had a very specific diner, like everybody went there. You knew everybody that went there. You knew that was his table, that's her table. You know, he's here at 11 o'clock on a Sunday, you know. And so politicians use those as ways to kind of campaign. There's actually a really interesting article on this phenomenon. It's called The Diner That Every Future President Must Visit by Gary He. It's on Eater. And I'm going to read you a quote. This particular diner that they're speaking of is called the Red Arrow. It's in Rhode Island, I believe. And so here is the quote. The origins of a surprising number of modern-day campaign conventions can be found in the 1992 Clinton campaign. While many paths to the White House began in Iowa, it's in New Hampshire. The New Hampshire primary proved just as pivotal. Clinton's strategy of getting personal with voters at diners across the state, including the Red Arrow, is credited for his subsequent second-place finish in the state primary, branding him as the comeback kid and propelling him into the nomination, then ultimately the presidency. Gore campaign operatives continued the tradition in 2000, officially making the Red Arrow an institution, and by 2008 election cycle, it had become a must-stop for both Democrats and Republicans. Trump went there, Obama went there, Ted Cruz is like, all the politicians have gone there. If you go on the Red Arrow website, right at the top, there's like a banner that says, interested in making a political stop? And like you can like call them and like show up.
Interesting.
So yeah, and that's the case for many diners in many states. So if you walk in one day and you see like, I don't know, not that President Obama would be running for president, but obviously again, but like if you see him there, just ask him what's going on.
He would like that.
He really would. And of course, diners have a huge part in like our pop culture, right? Like if you're watching like an American film, or if you're watching a film and they're at a diner, it feels so American. You know,
Grease, American Graffiti.
Exactly. There, Little Caesar, Edward G. Robinson plots like his rise to power while eating a ham sandwich at the diner counter, right? Jack Kerouac writes about diners in all of his writings. Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction begins and ends in a diner. Like these are some iconic Americana moments happening in diners. They really kind of give you the feeling of a nation. Am I right? And I want to end on a quote from Michael Stern. And this is from, which article is this from? I believe this is from the Epicurious History of the American Diner article. Quote, "The renegade appeal of real diners cannot be denied. They still whisper to us, give us permission to savor the simple, propagate pleasures of bacon cheeseburgers gobbled with mayo and 4 egg omelets with well-lubricated hash browns. They help us defy culinary correctness with food that's too unadorned and too unhealthy to be found in most restaurants. Within those chrome-plated walls, you can savor food that's so stripped down and simple, its quality is almost assured. Only in a diner or the privacy of your own home can you come as you are and eat what you like. Nutrition nannies be damned." End quote.
Beautiful. There's a diner down the street from me. Almost makes me want to go and grab a burger and fries.
Oh, God. One of the things that kills me about Chicago is they don't have real diners here. At least I haven't found one that I love. Because,
Salt and Pepper.
Where's that one?
It's in Wrigley.
Okay. Because diners have to be open. In my experience, every diner I've ever been to in New Jersey is open 24 hours. I should be able to work up at 1 o'clock in the morning and go get a chocolate milkshake with 2 eggs and cheese fries.
There was a 24-hour diner. There's actually multiple of them in Lakeview.
You're right.
And they have since, they're not there anymore. I can't get into it, but it's very upsetting.
No, I know. I think the one that you're talking about shut down. One of our close friends was devastated. He got a call and he heard that it was shutting down the next day and he was like, oh my God, he couldn't make it in time. I think it's called the Edge Diner. And then they replaced it with a new diner. And this is the thing that bothers me. When people call themselves a diner, but then they charge you $15 for 2 eggs and like a piece of rye toast. And I'm like, you are not a diner. This is offensive.
Well, the Melrose Diner was like huge in Boys Town. And it changed hands and now it's an egg-sperience.
No.
Upsetting.
Yeah. I think like there's a lot of like breakfast type places around me, but they close at 4 p.m. And I'm like, so I can't come to you at 10 o'clock at night after I play pool and I'm like drunk and I like want to eat hash browns and like a Reuben. I can't do that because you close at 4. That's not a diner. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a snob here, but that's not a diner. So if anybody's in Chicago and has a good diner recommendation that is like 2 blocks from my house, let me know because I haven't found one.
DM her for her exact address.
Thank you. What is your diner order? What is like your go-to?
Depends if I'm feeling sweet or savory. If I'm feeling sweet, I'll get chocolate chip pancakes. And if I'm feeling savory, I'll get like a corned beef hash or like a skillet type thing with hash browns, eggs, avocado, cheese, that type of thing. Amazing.
Before I was vegetarian, I would always do savory, always. And it would be something like a corned beef hash, 2 eggs, over easy, rye toast, or 2 pieces of bacon on the side. I also really like chicken fried steak. I love biscuits and gravy. But I feel like my drunk diner antics, you go to the diner at like 2 or 3 in the morning, like during college when I would do this, on the East Coast, I would always get like a turkey club with like French fries, a milkshake, and a bagel on the side with like a lot of butter.
I don't know if I would go for a turkey club, like a sandwich. I don't know.
Or
but I respect you.
A Denver omelet is a good one.
Yes.
Oh my God. There's this one Greek diner that had like, the best desserts too. Anyway, I love it.
That's that. So pop a champagne and eat some hash browns.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm hungry now. Shall I go make my fried rice? I'm going to make fried rice tonight. I'm very excited.
You should. I need to go grocery shopping. So I guess we should just sign off with this.
That mean we're done?
We're hungry. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for eating.
Yes, and drinking. Drink responsibly. If you want to talk to us, you can follow us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls.
Or Instagram at The Good Evening Girls.
Or TikTok at The Good Eve Girls.
This has been real. It's been fun. We're glad to be back on schedule.
Yes.
Regular programming commences now.
Thank you.
Yes.
So yeah, just keep curious.
Keep curious, folks. We'll see you next time with more curiosity.
Bye.
Bye.